Tell me, have you heard the teachings of the prophecy, the ancient text of the Singularity Testament? This indeed holds the solution to our previously unanswerable question. How does humanity stop war?
So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on episode 75 of the series, and in the previous episode we saw a ton of world events happening, such as the complete loss of nuclear weapons, a unification in Africa, and a big war in Oceania. So if you haven't seen the last video, make sure to go check it out before watching this one. But if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers by August 1st for a special vlog posted on this channel. Also, I do want to say very quickly that I will be moving soon. This background will be changing soon, and I will be moving into my own place. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into this video. Now, the first event of this video will be taking place over here in Russia. The Russian warlord will be making yet another move. And this time, he'll be sending his forces eastward and invading into this country here. Now, these two nations fought each other in World War IV. Tensions do still exist between these two, and this will be the hardest war that the Lime Team warlord has fought thus far. They will be successful in taking this major city from the Dark Side team within the first couple of weeks. However, an impressive counteroffensive takes place in the north, which hinders the progress of the Lime Team's army. But not in vain, as the Southern Army group is doing an amazing job at invading into this territory, and oftentimes what we're seeing here is that the people of the Dark Side team are welcoming the invaders of the Lime Team here. They aren't as opposed to this as you might think that they are. And that is in large part due to the fact that this nation is a struggling nation. Having moved from a communist regime to a democratic regime, you might assume that things would get better. However, that is not how the post-World War IV world is working at this time. Just because you flip ideology doesn't always mean that you're going to be successful. That's not always the fix to all of your problems. And so with a weak democratic government, alongside a poor economical standing, the Dark Side team will begin to lose this war massively as their land is invaded by the Lime Team. They will call on some of their neighbors to help them out, more specifically the Gold Team and their previous ally in the Yellow Team, but neither of these countries will respond. Simply enough, it's not worth their time. Eventually, this major city is captured, and the Lime Team's army starts to use modern warfare tactics to basically just sprout out and capture these various major cities, and oftentimes, once again, they are met with open arms by the civilians. Eventually, the Lime Team will simply send an ultimatum to the government of the Dark Side team, and that ultimatum will say this: surrender now, and you will continue to exist. We will not fully annex you. That is not our goals in this war. Our goals are simply to go ahead and take land that we feel is rightfully ours, rightfully part of a Russian empire. This is the first time that the warlord has ever mentioned a Russian empire. Now, the Russian country was a thing in World War III and before that as well, but not a Russian empire per se. It doesn't matter though. The Dark Side team isn't going to win this war. They know that, and thus they will be accepting the ultimatum of the Lime Team. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty here, we have the Russian country annexing all of this land from the Dark Side team. Around half of their country is now part of the Lime Team. And it's at this point that the Lime Team is becoming a seriously strong country. Look at all the major cities they have, look at all the land that they have, and remember the historical value of this land when it was a part of Russia. And speaking of Russia, it is on this day that the warlord presents himself in front of a crowd of people. Hundreds of thousands gather in the capital of the Russian country in celebration of the revival of a once powerful nation. Donning the flag of the historical entity of Russia, the Lime Team officially renames itself into the Russian Empire. The Russians have officially and finally returned. World reaction to this event actually isn't too much of anything. Most countries on the world recognize the Lime Team as the official successor state of Russia, although it was complicated with the Holy Russian Empire. At some point, the HRE was kind of considered the successor of Russia, the whole group of countries, but now there is technically an official successor. It is very apparent now this is the strongest Russian country, and they are back. Now, how strong are they compared to their neighbors? I did say that they were strong, but they're not stronger than Poland. They're not stronger than Finland, and they're not stronger than the Gold Team. This is still a relevantly weak country, although they are gaining momentum, and very soon could be challenging the power of their neighbors. But for now, the world isn't too worried about this. It's simply just another dictator who is power hungry, and eventually the consequences of his actions will come tumbling down on him, right? We'll have to see. Anyway, we're now jumping over here to East Asia, and more specifically to the nation of China. In the previous episode, they established themselves an economical alliance between them and their surrounding neighbors, including South China and then Manchuria. That was just the first step of their plan. Now they're going to go ahead and establish a military alliance. And it is obvious that the first two nations that are going to be joining this new military alliance are, of course, the economical allies of China. So once again, South China and Manchuria. But as it turns out, during World War IV, the new order that was established by none other than the Chinese and the Americans. Over the past few episodes, these two nations have been gaining power, whether it be invading Vietnam, invading the Caribbean, or taking over island nations in the Pacific. These two nations are currently dancing with each other. The Assembly of Nations was running an investigation behind the scenes, and this investigation was launched by none other than the red and blue Mesopotamian countries in accordance with each other. And very quickly, this investigation picked up steam as many of the non-Security Council members joined in, attempting to discover what happened behind the scenes in World War IV. Very clearly, there was something that happened that kind of changed the whole fate of the world. While most of us were distracted by the idea of communism versus fascism, behind the scenes a new order was taking hold. An order different from ideology. One that derives not from country versus country, but elites versus non-elites. And the elites in America and China are currently dictating what they do. Is it an oligarchy? You might call it that, but it might be something a little bit more sinister. The investigation launched into America and China finally is completed, and what is found is a little bit unsettling. During World War IV, America and China were both heavily suppliers of both sides. They supplied both the fascist and the communist with money and weapons. America favored the communists. They were previously a part of the Square Team, which had many communist nations within it, and after leaving the Square Team before World War IV, they still held those ties with those countries. They were still relatively friendly, and America didn't want to sabotage their former allies. So they were more involved with supplying the communists, but that doesn't mean they were also not supplying the fascists. More specifically, West Africa was supplied by the Americans as well. Another country supplied by the Americans was India. As for China, they also mostly helped out the communist nations, but just as with America, they also had their fair share of dealings with the fascists. More specifically, China helped out Red Australia in the war against Blue Australia. It might have even had something to do with Blue Australia's collapse in the previous episode. But most notoriously, China supplied Brazil in World War IV, which might explain as to why all of South America is currently fascist. As it turns out, this was a game of influence between America and China for the new world order that would take hold following World War IV, after radical ideology was dead and the old powers of the world were pushed aside, paving the way for America and China to come out on top. This was a secret agreement between the two. They drew up influence boundaries during World War IV. They knew that they would win. And ultimately, the coalition of democratic nations was them putting their foot down. The only stick in the mud for them was the Mesopotamian Empire. Truly, the old empire would have challenged this new world order. They likely would have sided with the communist powers after World War IV. That includes Rome, Poland, Norway. So America and China did everything they could to ensure that these nations would not come out on top. And the best way to do that and to keep the communists weak was by destroying the old empire and limiting it to Mesopotamia only. And that is how we find ourselves in this new world order. But back to the Chinese alliance. This is a move that is contradicting what they agreed on with America. While they agreed to have spheres of influence established, they did not agree that they would both have their own military alliances. That would be a provocative step in the wrong direction, a step in which would draw division between America and China, but we find ourselves seeing China here doing it anyway. Why is that? Well, China did an investigation of their own as well. In their agreement with America, there was a rule established. Do not topple the governments of foreign powers. We're going to do this in a way as to where we don't have to topple governments. Instead, we'll just influence them with all of the money and all of the equipment that we're giving them. America did not follow that. China investigated this, found America guilty, and now this is their response. Establishment of a military alliance. The Assembly of Nations is in awe. Can we trust the Security Council members? What else is happening here? And is there stuff happening behind the scenes that we still don't know about? It brings a question in front of the assembly. Is the AN legit? Are we sure that this isn't just another organization of states? Well, the fact that the Security Council members allowed for this investigation to continue is likely proof enough that this isn't just the same as the OS. This is new. This is different. This has the chance to evolve into an actual stable organization. As of now, it's a little bit questionable, but as we see, they're not stopping you from doing this investigation, meaning that it truly is a democratic process, and these smaller nations do indeed have representation. So it's something that we're just going to have to watch and monitor over these next few episodes. But with that lore dump out of the way, we can now continue on with the series and the expansion of China's military alliance, now including countries like the Seafrom Green country up in Siberia, their previous old ally in the Gold Team, and interestingly enough, the nation of West Mexico, a nation on the doorstep of America and their new empire. In the capital city of America, a plan will be made to respond to this. America is going to establish an alliance of their own. And thus we have the establishment of the 3-Point Star Alliance. Will I call it the 3-Point Star Alliance throughout the rest of the series? Probably not. I might just call it the Star Alliance. But the 3-Point Star Alliance actually kind of has a cool name to it, so we'll see. But America's allies are certainly a lot more interesting than China's. First of all, the first country to join this alliance is Mexico. That's a little bit of a change. These two nations fought each other in World War III, but since then have enjoyed very friendly relations and have also enjoyed joint military activities, economical pacts and agreements, and a ton of other joint agreements which have brought these two nations very close together. This is a loss of influence for China, who once had these guys as their ally, but as we saw, China also made up for that with a new ally in West Mexico. Previously known as the Terrorist Organization of Mexico, and is now currently known as, like I just said, West Mexico, these guys have come a very long way from being a terrorist organization that had pockets throughout Mexico and Texas, and to an actual functioning democratic society. But now they find themselves on the side of China, and are surrounded by regional threats such as America and Mexico. We'll have to see how exactly that plays out. But for now, the other countries to join in on America's alliance are going to be Norway, the Pink Team, and Korea. And now all of a sudden, both America and China have proxies on the border of each other's nations. You can kind of see how these two nations, they're dancing, but the dance is getting a little bit intense. The world is very, very, very cautious about this. They're very, oh no, let's not have another world war here. Let's not have another, great power war between the strongest and the second strongest countries in the world. And that's where the Assembly of Nations comes in. These other Security Council members, such as Greece, South Africa, Tibet, they'll step in, they'll say, hey, we cannot have another global war. Calm down. Let's ease our tensions a little bit. These military alliances, while they are, provocative in nature, they don't necessarily mean that you have to go to war. So let's just calm down a little bit. And America and China both come out jointly and say that, hey, we're not going to go to war. This is just a response to the other one's actions. This wouldn't have happened if the other guy didn't do what they did, and, so on and so forth. But it's not, aggressive. They're not having bad tensions right now. There's no mal feelings towards each other. It's just a neutral dance of power and influence. Going up into Canada, the Unitarians will be expanding. A new country will join this idea of fundamentally leaving behind your heritage, your culture, your identity, and striving to unite humanity into a more peaceful future. This country is the Gold Team. They will be joining the Unitarians. Now, there is a slight issue with them joining the Unitarians, of course. They do not border each other, but this is fine for the Unitarians. They see the vision, they see the future. They don't look at the present, they look at the future. This is okay, we'll figure it out. We'll make a deal with the Green Team. Maybe we can have, integration with them. Maybe they want to join us. Maybe we can do some kind of visa thing where people can just walk through the Green Team to get to the Blue Team, so on and so forth. So they will propose some ideas to the Green Team, and then the Green Team's like, well, we're actually considering joining you guys anyway. So we're going to go ahead and start to ratify that process. And so be it. The Green Team will eventually be joining the Unitarians, but not right now. They still have some steps to do. Taking a quick peek at the stability map, we can see that the Unitarians are now in the dark green, meaning they are completely stable, have very little turmoil within, if any. Previously, they were this lime color, the same as America, but now you can see they have joined the pact of the most stable countries in the world, showing that Unitarianism does indeed have a chance to really sprout into an actual thing that works. But now heading on over to Europe, we're going to have to take a look at Rome for a second. And that's for a pretty good reason. The Roman economy is now collapsing. Previously, it was bad, and it kept getting worse, and now it is officially on the collapse. The Assembly of Nations will attempt to aid Rome, but Roman officials are hesitant to listen to the nations in the Assembly of Nations, more specifically, the Security Council members that are trying to help them, and the neighbor countries that are trying to help them. And those neighbor countries are countries like the Dutch Republic, Germany, France, even Greece, the Farmers Republic, Poland, these guys are their former allies, but the Roman officials are just hesitant to take in any aid from any country. They have pursued neutrality and, in a sense, isolationism, but, being isolationist and being in the Assembly of Nations, those two things don't really go hand in hand. But what this leads to is Rome having to basically give up land. This is their own accord. This is what they decide to do instead of listening to the Assembly of Nations and, maybe taking on some loans taking on some money from other countries. They don't want to increase their debt. They're already heavily in debt to America. So they do this instead. How about instead of having to deal with these populations that are now becoming, unhappy with our government and, showing signs of maybe moving to resistance or rebellion, we'll just fix the problem before it happens. So Rome will be releasing the dark purple country. Catalonia has returned to the map, and this is a pretty surprising move for a lot of the countries around the world, because the Romans really didn't seem like they wanted to, give up land. They seemed like they were going down an imperialist route similar to America and China, where they would continue to expand across the Mediterranean. But obviously the financial situation in Rome is not good enough for them to do that, and therefore we have them now giving up land. Now, notably so, these three islands were a part of the Catalonians, but the Romans will be holding on to those for very obvious reasons. This is a symbol of influence, a symbol of power in the Mediterranean, given that the Catalonia would basically say that, hey, we're kind of collapsing and we're very weak. So they're going to hold on to this for military and influential purposes. But the Roman economy is still in a free fall, and the chance of rebellions in other regions are still prominent. It's just that Catalonia was the most likely, and so therefore they fixed that problem before it could actually become a problem. We now head down to Africa, more specifically Southern Africa, where we have a military alliance losing a few members. After the conclusion of World War IV, Africa became a pretty stable and pretty peaceful continent. Of course, Ethiopia was kind of like, the vein of all evil and violence on the continent, so now that they're gone, it's a little bit easier. No more genocides, no more mass murderings, nothing like that. West Africa, of course, we saw them flip into a democracy in the previous episode, which officially makes the fascist bloc a lot weaker and also means that democracy is the most favorable ideology in the world at this point. And with Africa now being this friendly continent with their neighbors now integrating a little bit more and becoming more and more friendly, the idea of this massive military alliance in Southern Africa is kind of pointless. So a few countries will be leaving, like the Red Team, for example. They will be making their leave. So will these two major countries down here in the south, as well as Tanzania. With that, South Africa's military alliance now officially only has 3 members, being themselves and these 2 up here in the north. It is likely that we see these guys remain due to the fact that they border both dictatorships and fascist countries. Therefore, they want reinsurance and even insurance on the fact that they could be invaded by these guys. And South Africa, of course, will step in and protect them. So we have this alliance continue to exist despite it being in a weaker state. But now we're heading on back over to America, where we have the Americans doing something that is considered risky. Very unfavorable, and the world will not be too happy with the Americans. But America, the second strongest country in the world, is not going to care too much about whatever everyone else is saying. But American naval ships will be spotted off the coast of Central America. And eventually, much similar to what we saw with the invasion of that Pacific island in the previous episode, these naval boats will begin to rain fire upon Central America. The Air Force will take effect, dropping payloads over this entire country, crippling its military infrastructure and destroying all military institutions. We also see economical capital in this country attacked, and then the naval landing happens. American troops will be taking and seizing the Panama Canal. But not only the Panama Canal, no, there are bigger intentions here. America plans on taking over all of Central America. Now, they are stopped by the Darien Gap, the formidable geographic boundary, which you may not cross, but that doesn't mean you can't invade this way, so they will indeed invade that way. Now, Central America, not a member of the Assembly of Nations, so the AN will not be doing anything on behalf of Central America here. But once again, as we've seen before, the Assembly of Nations isn't too happy with the expansion of America and their inherent imperialism. So a committee will be called upon to investigate America, to look at economical sanctions and stuff like that, and that's where America puts their foot down. Hey, I'm one of the strongest economies in the world. I control a lot of the world's currency. I have a ton of influence over a ton of countries that even, I haven't highlighted yet. So back off. And then mysteriously enough, a lot of the countries on the committee just give up. They're done. They leave. The committee falls apart, and America will once again go unpunished for their imperialist actions. Did America buy off some of these countries? Probably. But more so, they used their influence that they built in World War IV. Remember, a ton of countries are in debt to America, like Rome, for example. They're in debt to America. Other communist and fascist powers. West Africa was one of those countries that was on the committee, and they're one of the countries that left. West Africa is in debt to America. And the whole idea of America playing both sides in World War IV doesn't really set well with their previous allies. Poland, for example, is now America's #1 hater. They feel very betrayed and backstabbed, but what are they going to do? They're all the way over here in Europe. Also, Poland feels the same way about some of their other allies, like Norway, for example, who as we remember, left the war and had a little bit of a political change, and they now find themselves allied with the Americans. Poland knows that America probably had something to do with the whole government change in Norway and them leaving the war. Poland is not happy with that development, and they're a little bit mad at the people of Norway for just letting it happen. But back to the invasion of Central America, the American troops are seeing resistance, just not great resistance. But then we see something happen, and that is the invasion by Mexico. Yeah, they just allied with America, and to uphold that promise of being America's ally and being by their side, Mexico will be sending their army straight into Central America. The Central Americans did not see this coming, unfortunately. In fighting up against two major military powers, one being one of the strongest in the world, of course, the Central Americans are at a loss, and eventually their country will begin to crumble as foreign invaders take more and more land and more major cities, until eventually their capital city is lost, and they have no other option but to surrender over to the Americans and the Mexicans. America has secured the Panama Canal, one of the most important trade destinations in the world. The Panama Canal connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. It makes America's connection with China a lot easier because they don't have to go, all the way around South America or all the way around Africa. You just go through the Panama Canal and across the Pacific and you're there. Now, the Panama Canal previously was controlled by Central America and was open to all international waters, but with America now having control of it, that could definitely change. We'll have to see. But for now, let's take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty here, we can see that it is pretty simple. Mexico will be annexing these 2 or 3 northern provinces, and America will be getting pretty much all of Panama and control over the Panama Canal, now sharing a border with Brazil, one of their enemies. As for Central America, they will still exist. However, their government will be getting a new ideology, being democracy, moving away from communism and shrinking the communist bloc. But Central America was kind of like I don't want to call it an exact hermit state, but it was along the lines of that. But anyway, here is our new map of Central America, and in addition to getting a new government, the Central Americans will also be joining in on the Assembly of Nations. Interestingly enough, on the exact same day that we see West Mexico join in on the Assembly, making it so that North America is the first continent to have every single country within it be in the Assembly of Nations. Hawaii, I think, is also considered North American, simply due to the fact that it's controlled by the United States. So they're also going to join the Assembly of Nations. I don't think this happened at the same time as West Mexico and Central America joining. Probably happened a while ago. But just for the sake of what I just said being true, they will, of course, be joining. And now officially, all North American countries are in the AN. We're now heading back over to the Middle Eastern region, but just a little bit north of that to the Caucasus. We're seeing this great country here join up in the Mesopotamian Economic Order, the MEO, which, as we all know, is an economical alliance established after World War IV between the Mesopotamian nations and the Mesopotamian nations only to kind of, mimic the economy of the old empire, which was the best economy in the world. Uses the same currency, and the Great Team wants in on that. Of course, they were a previous old empire province / region, so it makes sense for them to finally join. Just a little bit east of this region, we see an interesting economic development. The Tibetans will be leaving India's economic alliance. Now, the reason for them doing this is kind of foggy. They don't really give too much of a realistic answer because India's economic alliance is a very strong one. They say that they left because they want to pursue their own domestic economical endeavors, basically focus on their own economy rather than, having kind of an integrated economy with some of these other nations. Basically, we're going to put Tibet first. Nothing wrong with that, and the world doesn't really see too much with it, but there might be a little bit more to that decision behind the scenes. But now for our final event of this video, we have to go ahead and go right back over to the Americas. And that's for a pretty good reason. The Brazilian military has just made an invasive maneuver into recently annexed American land, taking over all of their Colombian claims, and then landing in Panama and taking over the entirety of it, leaving American military personnel dead, battleships destroyed, aircraft carriers destroyed. Basically, America's Navy takes a big hit from this invasion, and Brazil has just presented themselves as the thorn in America's side. Brazil declares war on America. The South American fascist bloc has been re-energized and is seeking revenge and a stop to imperialism within the Americas. This decision by Brazil to invade America is certainly an interesting one that could have consequence, and one that could even lead to the fall of the South American fascist order, but it's a bold move by Brazil nonetheless. Brazil is standing up to imperialism, they're standing up to this new world order, and they're putting their foot down, saying that, hey, your invasion and encroachment into South America is not welcomed. Please leave our continent alone. America, of course, will be responding to this. They were declared war upon after all. And as we know, America has an alliance of their own now. An alliance consisting of strong members such as Mexico and Norway will be fighting up against Brazil and its allies, more specifically the fascist nations of South America. Who will come out on top? The second strongest country in the world or the third strongest country in the world? I want to thank you guys so much for watching this episode of What If Civilization Started Over. We have 25-ish episodes left in the series. The finale will be releasing in January of 2026. I hope you guys are excited. I want to say that I have, I've come back from vacation now. I am home again. I'm getting ready to move, but in all of this time that I've had, away from home and on vacation, I've really kind of formulated the ending to this series. And I just want to say that you guys are going to absolutely love it. It will be probably my greatest work yet. I'm very, very excited, very, very scared, a little bit nervous about this finale because of the way that I'm doing it. The way that I'm doing it is going to be different from any other finale that I've done in any other series in Alternate Future Season 1 or Season 2. Speaking of Alternate Future Season 1 and Season 2, make sure that you guys watch those series before we get to the finale of WICSO. All of the lore is tied up together. These three series are all connected in a way, and if you didn't know that, that means you didn't watch Alternate Future Season 2. So, once again, I'm recommending that you guys watch the entirety of the Alternate Future Season 1 and Season 2, but if you don't want to do all that, then I highly recommend watching Season 2, and even if you don't watch Season 2, watch the finale of Season 2, and also make sure to watch the Season 2 trailer, so you understand what's happening in Season 2 without watching Season 1. Basically, just watch the Alternate Future series, please. The lore likely won't make too much sense if you don't. It's once again all connected, and that's just kind of my final message to you guys in this video. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to show some support. I'm trying to get to 200,000 subscribers by August 1st. By the time this video releases, we have, actually no, when I'm recording this, we have a week to get there. Basically around 6,000 to go. We'll see. We're getting a lot of subscribers, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know if it's enough. Once again, we'll have to see. Once again, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys are excited for the next episode where America and Brazil duke it out, and I will see you all in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Chillturn Mapping, Omega the YouTuber, Illy Goated, Nevada Garbage Trucks, Vista Mapper, Xander Pro Productions, Geo1010 Gamer, Knighthood 7353, and Golden Ball Mapping, 101 Rotanami T, King Cheese, Australian Geo Guy, Zerminator, Icy Static FN, CTG on YT, WICSO, Euroball, Augusto, A Norwegian, RS, Gail Martinez, Zaylance, What in the World? Freezioi, Laser Taze, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammer Toad 45, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.